Hi, and welcome to episode number 7 of a new series where we'll be using the new Unity 5 to make a really simple game. In this episode, we'll be shooting projectiles, adding the ability for your character to shoot projectiles. So we will start by creating the bullet, and we'll talk about prefabs and how they help your character to shoot the bullets. So let's begin by creating the bullet. So let's go to the Unity 5 game editor. So to start creating our first bullet, go to the sprites folder and drag and drop the bullet sprite onto the scene, the game scene here. And Unity 5 will create a bullet game object for you. So let's change the name for it to bullet. And let's change the order in layer from 0 to maybe 2. And since we are at it, select the player game object and change the order in layer to 2 as well. So this is our bullet. So for our first bullet, in order to make it move, we have to add a rigid body 2D to it. So select the bullet game object and choose add component. Type in rigid body 2D and press enter to add it as a component to it. Make sure you set gravity scale to 0 so that it does not drop to the bottom of the screen. So now when you start the game by pressing on the play button, we have our first bullet here. So stop the game. So we have created our first bullet. Let's move on to prefabs and how they help us create the bullets that we need. So think of prefabs as game objects that come with predefined settings or configurations that you can create multiple copies of. In other words, think of them as recyclable game objects. So imagine you have a game object here and you have maybe a setting called A on it and a setting called B on it. So if you want to create this game object which is called X, do you want to create it from scratch and apply setting A and B to it again? So that is not wise. So in order to save time, another way is to create a prefab and make this game object a prefab so that when you want to create another game object that is similar to the X game object, you just need to create a copy of this prefab. And you will get X2, which you can consider to be the same as X, but it's just a copy. Without creating it from scratch again. So how do we relate to that in Unity 5? So let's go back to the Unity 5 game editor Okay, so to begin, select the assets folder and right click to create a new folder. And we will call the new folder prefabs, where we will save all of our prefabs. Okay, so before we create our bullet prefab, okay, we are going to create a new script just for the bullet. Okay, so go to scripts and right click to create a new script, and let's call it bullet. Okay, now select the bullet game object and select add component. Okay, type in bullet, press enter to add it as a component to the bullet game object. Okay, now that we have the bullet game object, okay, select the prefabs folder, right click in the empty area here and create prefab. Okay, let's name our new prefab bullet. And what we are going to do next is to create the new prefab by selecting our bullet game object and dragging and dropping it onto the prefab which we have just created. Okay, so this is our first prefab which we have just created. And now let's move on to shooting the bullet prefab which we have just created. Okay, so remember in the previous episode where we talked about pushing stuff and making them move. So it's the same for our bullet prefab. So imagine this is the bullet. Okay, in order to make it move, we have to apply a force in a certain direction to make it move in a certain direction. So to shoot the bullets, we will have to apply a force below it to make it go up. Okay, so let's go back to the Unity 5 game editor and select the player game object. Okay, go over to where it says player script and double click on player. Okay, so Mono Develop will start and show you the player script. So this is where we left off from the previous episode. Okay, so inside the update method here, and in this part where it says input.getKeyNow keycode.x is where we will create the bullets and shoot them upwards. Okay, before that, okay, we'll need to create a link to the bullet prefab. So over here, type in public bullet. Okay, so this will allow us to use this prefab as a foundation to create multiple copies of the bullet. So going back to the update method, and where here we check if you have pressed the X key, we create a new bullet here. Okay, by typing in bullet. Okay, new bullet equals to bullet instantiate. Okay, bullet. So what this line does is that based on the prefab bullet, that you have created, it will create a copy of it and return it to you, which is the new bullet. Okay, and we will place the new bullet slightly above where your character is at. Okay, so transform dot position dot y plus maybe 0.5. And as we have mentioned just now, in order to make the bullet go in one direction, we need to push it. So copy and paste this here and change this to new bullet dot get component rigid body 2D dot add force. Okay, but instead of using this, we'll use a small amount of force that goes up. So make sure that the x is 0 and the y is maybe 10. Okay, so for faster speed, use a greater value here. Okay, but for now, we'll just use 10. Okay, save the script by using Command S or Control S, depending on if you are on Mac or if you are on Windows. Okay, so go back to the Unity 5 game editor. Okay, now when you select the player game object, okay, notice that there's now a new field called bullet. Okay, that's for you to drag and drop in the prefab bullet which you have created inside the prefabs folder. So drag and drop the bullet prefab to the player script where it says bullet. Okay, and now, okay, start the game by pressing the play button. Okay, now when you press the X key, notice that a new bullet is created and it moves up because you push it up. Okay, but notice that the bullet is moving at a slow speed. So if you want to make it go faster, let's take it one step further. Okay, by going to the player script here, and inside this line where you add the force to push it upwards, okay, put a comma here, okay, and type in force mode 2D dot impulse. Okay, this will allow it to push it with a sudden force instead of a consistent force. Okay, going back to the Unity 5 game editor, start the game again. Okay, and this time, notice that the bullets go faster when you press the X key. And of course, you can move around while shooting the bullets. Okay. So in the next episode, we'll be looking at how to create a vertical scrolling background. As you can see, currently there is nothing in the background. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Okay, to allow you to control your character's movement. So let's start with rigid bodies. Okay, so there are many ways to